The alarm sounds. It's a warning from the National Weather Service. Directions about what to do and how to respond are given. But what will you do? Many people brush off these warnings, and researchers want to do something about that.
So in the past few years, to improve sort of this disconnect between the weather forecast and the public understanding and conceptualizing, especially when it comes to severe weather risk, we've sort of taken a two-pronged approach. One is looking at developing innovative outreach tools, and then second is to leverage those tools to better understand how members of the public react to severe weather, and therefore we can hopefully improve all sorts of components of our outreach.
That was Jase Bernhardt, an Assistant Professor of Geology, Environment, and Sustainability at Hofstra University in Hempstead, New York. If Bernhardt looks familiar to you, it's because he was a forecaster on Weather World from 2012 through 2016. He got his Bachelor of Science degree in meteorology from Cornell University and then came to Penn State, where he earned his doctorate in geography. After graduation, he was offered the chance to join the faculty at Hofstra.
But it wasn't really until I moved to Hofstra as a professor that I became intrigued by the issue of weather communication, given that there's still so many weather-related fatalities that are preventable. Clearly, despite great advances in weather forecasting, we need to improve our communication and outreach to the public. So it seemed like a really important issue to be working on.
So Bernhardt had an idea. He turned to video games. That's right, the thing that drives so many parents crazy may actually be the key to getting the public to listen to weather warnings.
So this work started by developing a virtual reality simulation of a tropical cyclone or hurricane landfall. And we use that to understand if showing a dramatic, immersive virtual reality presentation could help convince people, at least in a hypothetical situation, to evacuate for approaching a hurricane.
He started the research by surveying individuals around the Hofstra campus, which is located on New York's Long Island.
So an interesting area because it's rare, but they do occasionally get impacted by hurricanes. And when they do get directly impacted, the results can be very, very extreme.
The study's participants were mostly college age, a group that is comfortable using virtual reality, also known as VR.
And we found that we split into two groups, one getting the virtual reality, the other not getting the virtual reality simulation of the hurricane. Both groups got some basic information. There's a hurricane headed towards Long Island. Here's the track. What would you do in this hypothetical case? How likely would you be to evacuate on a scale of 1 to 5, reinforce your home, notify elderly neighbors and relatives? And we found that for many of those questions, the individuals who were randomly selected to view the virtual reality simulation of the hurricane were more likely to say, at least hypothetically, they would evacuate and take the hurricane more seriously. So it shows that virtual reality has some utility, perhaps an outreach tool, for example.
The information learned from the hurricane study led Bernhardt to dig deeper and create a video game, complete with controllers, to start a new project. This one based on rip currents, a leading cause of injuries and fatalities among beachgoers.
Rip currents don't directly injure people and hurt people. They don't pull you underwater. But what can happen, especially with weak and inexperienced swimmers at the beach, they can panic during a rip current, which pulls people away from shore and can be quite frightening. So it's a classic case where if we can just improve people's understanding, we can really limit vulnerability to the hazards.
Instead of fighting a rip current, swimmers are encouraged to swim parallel to the shore to get out of the danger, or to wave for help. Bernhardt's group created a new VR game to simulate what it would feel like to be in one.
So for the rip current study, we actually went to the beach on Long Island during the summer of 2019 in July and August, and just found some folks that were at the beach and willing to take a few moments to try out the game and then share their experiences with us. So we try to go directly to the population that's most impacted by rip currents, the folks that are at the beach during the summer.
What he found was that many people said they knew what to do in a rip current, but either panicked in the moment or forgot what they should do.
Takeaways to really communicate very effectively and very strongly about here's what you do in a rip current. The idea, if you get caught in one, is to either swim parallel to shore. The rip current is a narrow channel perpendicular to shore, so swimming parallel can get you out of that danger. Or just wave for help. It's not going to take you underwater directly, so if you wave, a lifeguard can help rescue you and you don't panic and fight it and then potentially get into trouble.
Bernhardt's latest research focuses on how people respond to flash flood warnings, something that is no stranger to those of us here in the Keystone State.
Flooding is a huge risk in Pennsylvania and across much of the country. So really important weather hazard to study. And we created an online video game and sent out a survey to a random selection of people across the US. And in the game, they're driving and encounter a flood on the road, and we evaluated what they did when encountering the flood.
Another thing they studied was how useful wireless emergency alerts are. These are the warnings that are sent to cell phones.
And those can be useful in spreading the word about a flash flood. But for example, when somebody's driving, if they can't check their phone while they're driving, the warning might not be really received by them. Further, if they do see the warning somehow, if they're not given information about, say, a detour they could take, we found that people weren't very willing to really want to listen to the warning, still want to go on their way.
Bernhardt's team also learned that in addition to their game demonstrated a very positive outcome.
And another interesting finding from the research was that when we included a call to action in the text, like turn around, don't drown, that was very useful in convincing people to avoid the flood and stop or turn around when they reach the flooded roadway. So a call to action, giving people a concrete action to take, seems like it can be an effective part of weather warning messaging and outreach.
And while weather warnings have improved in recent years, there are still things that can be done when they are communicated.
One thing we've noticed is while warning messages is getting better, there's lots of work in this, there's an issue with language barriers and warnings and messaging often only being in the English language. So we're looking to, for example, expand this to Spanish language warnings and tools to hopefully help populations with whom English is not their first language. So that's one initiative we're planning to work on soon.
So the next time you see someone playing a video game, think about how Bernhardt's team is using that technology to communicate valuable weather information using more than just words. A new way to keep the public prepared in advance of the next storm. For Weather World, I'm Marissa Ferger.